How's it going, everybody? This is Jason Ostrowski, and welcome to another edition of the Everything Real Estate Podcast. We have a great episode for you today. My guest this week is George Maynes, co-team leader of the G2 Philly team at Fox & Roach's Society Hill office. George and his team are powerhouses in the Philadelphia metro area. They are consistent top producers, earning Chairman's Circle Diamond honors for 2024. Today's topic is engage your people, grow your business. And we're diving deep into what it really takes to stay on top of mind with your people in today's market, how intentional communication, true community involvement, and a systemized follow-up strategy can set you apart. We'll also touch upon how George and his team are leveraging social media to build meaningful relationships and turn engagement into results. So whether you're a new agent looking to build your base or a seasoned pro aiming to strengthen your network, this episode is packed with value. So let's dive deep into this week's episode with my special guest, George Maynes. It's great to have George Maynes from the G2 Philly team on the podcast with me this week. George, we finally made this happen and got to do this together after much poking and prodding on my part. I'm really excited to have you with me, and it's been a long time coming. So how are you feeling? Are you ready to do this with me today?
Hey, Jason, I'm ready. I want to thank you for having me on the podcast and for twisting my arm. And I'm a big fan of the show. I listen often. I always think it's very educational and entertaining. So I'm glad to finally be a guest.
Well, you know, George, I have the utmost respect for you and what you do with your team. And I am truly excited to have you here with me today, as I said. And I'm excited to talk about today's topic with you in particular, which is engage your people, grow your business. And for this episode, I want to break today's podcast down into 4 subsections. The first of which we're going to talk about is staying in flow with your people. So let's begin there, if that's okay with you. And to start, I have a very simple question, which is, what does staying in flow with your clients mean to you in particular? And how has it impacted your business growth?
So it's a great question. I think staying in flow, number one, means staying top of mind. So making sure that I'm putting my name in front of them as often as possible, but also in a multiple different ways. So that way they're seeing my name on social media, via email, maybe a mailer comes to their home. But I think the most important part of staying in flow is kind of just making sure that it's casual and we have like an ongoing natural relationship. So for example, if I see a property sold on a client's block, I can text them, hey, did you see that recent sale? And we can kind of strike up a natural conversation. And it's not like super awkward. And they're thinking, why is George texting me out of the blue? We're in flow with each other because we kind of communicate various ways all throughout the year. So when I do reach out to them for something, it's natural.
Real estate in many ways is all about the habits that you have, right? Good habits lead to more business. Bad habits lead to less business. So I know that you have really good habits because before you and I even met, and we know each other a little bit, but before we even met, I'm getting your emails. Like I know about the G2 Philly team. Like you're out there. You kind of permeate the real estate space in the area, right? So you're always in the background, and I think that's a good thing. I mean that as a compliment. And so what are a few simple habits you use daily or weekly with your people to stay consistently top of mind without being pushy? You kind of answered a little bit of that with question 1, but how do you do that without being pushy?
So I think it's number one, you have to have a plan, and you also have to be really consistent. I tell people, if you just make one Facebook post, you're not going to get any business from it. Or you might get lucky, but it's not going to be, you're not going to build a career on that. And the same thing, you can't just send one email. So you have to have a plan and you have to be consistent with it. So I'm really big with time blocking. So I review my business and marketing plan probably once a week, and I maybe tweak it a little bit here and there. And I'm really strict with time blocking my marketing activities. But I like that you said that I'm in the background, because that's what I really want to be, in the background for my clients. But then when I see them in person or exchange a text with them or a phone call, they usually will bring up something that they saw like in the background. So if I send a mass email or I make a social media post, there's no pressure on them to engage with me, because they know that it's mass marketing. But when I do reach out to them one-on-one, they see what I've been doing, whether a listing I'm working on or a community event I'm involved in, so that it's easy to strike up conversation.
Well, I also think that you do a really good job of, I say permeating, but I always talk about let's try and saturate the market, and not in a bad way. But like you said, your presence is always known. Your presence is always felt. So you're kind of setting up that touch in the future, that direct touch with what you're doing in the background. And I do think that you talk about, and we're going to get into being systematic, but that's what really strikes me about you, is that you're very systematic in your approach. And obviously, if you're not putting yourself out there in some form or fashion systematically, then like you had said, if you're making one post on Facebook, that's not going to cut it. If you want to do a lot of business in our real estate field, you have to be willing to consistently put yourself out there. You do a great job of that. So I want to talk about just a real world example with this. So can you share an example where, staying in flow with a past client led to a surprising referral or opportunity? Because I can tell you from my personal standpoint, just doing this podcast has opened doors for me for my business, because I do it consistently. And so whatever you're going to do, if you do it consistently, it's going to lead to greater opportunity. And so can you share a past story, I guess, with a client that led to something surprising to you and an opportunity that you followed up on?
Sure. So it's interesting, because I always say that a lot of times you never know where your next client's coming from. So in a way, based on the way I handle my marketing plan, and most of the agents on my team handle their marketing, it's a little bit different than if we're just, if an agent's going after expire listings or FSBOs, they're targeting these potential sellers. And when they get a listing, they were expecting to get it, because they were working so hard to get it. With my type of marketing, it's more that I'm touching so many people that I never know where that next client or referral is going to come from. And the one thing I do know is, because I'm consistent with it, that the referrals and the clients are going to come. I just don't know exactly where from. But I'll give you an example. About 2 years after my wife and I purchased our short home down in Ocean City, New Jersey, I was starting to do some marketing around shore properties, because I'm also licensed in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. And I was trying to diversify how I was letting people know that I was active down the shore. Now, I would post some listings, but I would also post like being out the restaurants or just being on the beach, and kind of showing like the lifestyle of the shore, not just real estate for sale. And I got a call out of nowhere from a woman I knew from Philadelphia. And she said, "Hey, I was just in Ocean City. I went to an open house, and I think that the house is perfect for my brother who lives in Texas. And he doesn't know anything about Ocean City, but this would be a great opportunity for him." And I went over to the property, did like a preview for him. In addition, she had already went through the open house, but it was like, wow, that was really unexpected, but it came from my putting myself out there and letting people know that I was serving the shore, and also spending a lot of time with the shore.
I would expect that you have a pretty large number of people that you're consistently reaching out to. Would that be fair to say with what, whether it be your mass mailers or whatever, like you're reaching a ton of people probably. Is that correct?
Yes. So reaching a couple thousand people via social media and mass email, which we use ActivePipe for our mass emails. But then I have a few hundred people on a mailing list and I'm not talking like mailing like geographic farming. I'm talking people I actually know that I'm sending mailers to. And then I try to narrow down like my top like 50 to 75 supporters, and I'll actually make a little bit more of an effort to reach out to them more on a personal level via email or text or phone or a personalized email.
Yeah, I mean, strategically, that makes total sense. I mean, Buffini would be your A clients, Ninja would be your raving fans. Those people you can subcategorize into obviously the people that you want to touch the most and reach out to the most. Again, by our conversation here, you kind of have that formula down, and the proof is in the pudding. You see what you're doing in terms of your business, your team's business. So one thing that I really wanted to get in this podcast with you is to talk about your community involvement, because that's another part of what you do beyond what you're sending out, beyond, your typical marketing. You're involved in the community as well. And so how important has local community involvement been to your long-term success?
I'm glad you brought that up. If just going back to the point you just made about Ninja selling and Brian Buffini, I would say that my business plan is if Ninja and Buffini had a kid, that would be my business plan, because I picked and chose what I like from each, and I think both are really great programs. Regarding the community involvement, it's really a big part of my business, but also a part of my life. And I think I'm really lucky that my wife shares the same values. So we both have been very fortunate in our careers, and early on in our marriage or our relationship, we decided we wanted to try to start giving back. And that started out just like volunteering. We volunteered at the Ronald McDonald House, driving the van, and kind of just getting involved in little ways. Now we're fortunate we can do a little bit more. I think the most important thing with our community involvement is it has to be natural and organic. And it's not necessarily all about charity or community service. A lot of our community involvement is we'll get involved with like fitness groups. We both enjoy working out when it's nice on the art museum steps. And, I get a lot of business from those types of groups, and I don't show up handing out business cards. I show up, I work out, I work hard, and I organically make some connections, and somebody eventually brings up, what do you do for a living? Or somebody else mentions what I do for a living. And it really spirals, because then I'll organically, naturally become friends with somebody. And then next thing you know, I'm friends with them on social media. I'm texting them. I'm asking for their address so I can mail them, a Phillies magnet. And now they can't escape. They're part of the.
They got pulled into the black hole that is George Maynes marketing.
Exactly.
Again, we talked about this in our phone call. We talked about fitness groups, we talked about charity, but I think the number one point that you've made with what you're saying is, and this is the number one rule in real estate if you want to be successful, is to show up. Whether that's going to be showing up in the office, whether that's going to be showing up and doing your marketing consistently, whether that's showing up in the community, you're there. Your presence is known. And like you said, you can sell without selling. That's a very ninja tactic, right? Sell without selling. You don't need to be in somebody's face with, with real estate, as long as you're showing up and being in front of people and organically making that connection with them. And you seem to do that very well. So, do you approach community involvement with a structured plan? I mean, we're already talking about what you're doing, but are you strategic, or do you take a more organic approach, and why?
Well, I think a little bit of both. I would say that I'm very deliberate to make sure that I'm involved in various things in the community, whether it be supporting a charity, attending a fundraiser, sponsoring a 5K. But like for example, like I won't just sponsor 5K. Like I'll run in the 5K, and I think I get much more relationship building from running in the 5K than sponsoring. Sponsoring it, you get your name on a banner, you get your name on a T-shirt, and that's all great. And I think it's wonderful to do that if you can. But when I'm actually running the 5K and I'm kind of joking with people like I hope I finish this and that kind of stuff, that's really where I'm building the relationships. So it's you have to be deliberate about being involved, and it's actually part of my marketing plan. I will actually have it in there, like volunteer, sponsor, that kind of stuff. But the organic part is really where the true value comes from.
Do you do community invite? We talk about individual things, but as a team, you talked about sponsoring, like say a 5K. Like as a team, do you do a lot of community involvement as a team, or do you focus? Do each of you, I guess, focus on individualistic community involvement, or do you look at it as a team aspect and you all do it together?
Both. So everybody on the team has their own causes that they like to support. Whether it be planting trees in a community garden, or working at an animal shelter, and those people are doing that individually on their own. But we will. So we have one nonprofit that we support. It's called Legacy of Hope. They support local families that are struggling with financial needs because of a cancer diagnosis. Mm. So if, for example, they need to renovate a home for a family to live in it, then we as a team will volunteer to help with that renovation. Wow. Or around the holidays, we'll do like a toy drive, or we'll do a small Thanksgiving drive where we'll donate food for some families to like a local church or a local shelter. So we do both team and individual.
That's really amazing, George. And you get, obviously, from doing volunteer work, it's a point of pride for you too, individually, right? You're helping your community, you're helping your business. It's win-win for everybody. I'm big on that. And you and I talked when we had a phone call earlier this week. I distinctly remember you saying to me that if you had a new agent on your team and you were training them, what can I do to drive my business? And you said, I remember you saying to me, one of the first things you could do is volunteer in your local community and kind of get your feet under you that way in terms of business, but also helping your community.
That's right. It's, I just think it's a great way to meet people and grow your network. And it's like-minded people. They're volunteering, you're volunteering. You obviously both have a passion for giving back. And you really have to pick something that you're going to enjoy and that you care about. So that way, when you're doing it, it doesn't seem like forced, like you're there, you're court ordered to be there or something, right? Like you have to, people have to know that you want to be there. And the giving back thing initially started for me just because I felt so grateful and lucky to be where I was in life. And maybe it was just kind of, I grew up, I went to Catholic school, so I had to volunteer in high school, every year for various things. So maybe that was a little bit of a carryover from it. But once I started really getting into it, I realized that I was getting so much more in return than I was giving. So it not only makes me feel good, it actually really does help my business. And I'm not saying that's why I do it, but it absolutely 100% improved my business when I started to get more involved with stuff like that.
Well, it's kind of self-perpetuating, and it just, the goodness of what you're doing drives your business, and it's that cycle over and over again. And I'm a big proponent of, and this is a big reason why I wanted you on this podcast is because your community involvement. I know that you do a lot there, and I'm just, I have the utmost respect for you and your team for doing that. And, part of, again, I don't want to linger too much on the community part, but I think if agents are listening out there and they're saying to themselves, they're a newer agent, what can I do? Here it is, right? Here it is. Here's the blueprint for you to follow and to feel good about what you're doing in the process. I want to move on. We're going to talk about being systematic, because that's the other thing that's a theme throughout this podcast that we're talking about. And many agents know they should work their sphere systematically, but few do it consistently. So what's your system for keeping in touch? Like, what's your preferred system in order to make sure that you're getting out what you need to get out and doing it consistently?
So I want to make sure that I touch people in my network every way possible that they communicate. So I want to make sure I'm interacting with them via social media, whether it be mostly Facebook and Instagram, but a little bit of LinkedIn. And I want to be in their email, in their inboxes, and most of that is mass emails, but also we use like the automatic home value emails, which I believe I'm going to switch that over soon to Real Scout. They have a new nurturing program we can use. But I want to touch them always: social media, email, mailings. I do probably 6 to 8 mailings a year, and sometimes some of the mailings are just sending out sports schedules. That's kind of become like a thing that my network expects from me. But then I'll send out like spring home maintenance tips and various things like that. But then I also want to engage them by inviting them. We host a couple events every year, like client appreciation events. One we do around the holidays. We have Santa, and we have a photographer taking pictures of the kids with Santa. Another one we do in the spring, which is a little bit more adult oriented. But just even inviting them. So just inviting them to the event, even if they can't make it, it's just a good point of contact. And then around the holidays, we usually, give our top like 50 to 75 clients like a small little holiday gift, just something to thank them for their support and the referrals. Getting back to your question, is this system is having a plan to touch them in so many different ways and being consistent with it. Like I mentioned earlier, I use time blocking a lot on my calendar, and then I always try to reach out to people individually, just very casually, just to kind of just make conversations, so that way they feel like, I feel like if they know that they have like a casual ongoing relationship with me, that when they need something or they hear of a friend that needs help with some real estate, they're going to think of me and refer me.
Absolutely. And I want to actually get off on a side tangent here, because you had mentioned the sports calendars, and it kind of cracks me up. I know that you know this, but I think one year I was like, these sports calendars, it's so cliche, all these realtors send out this stuff. You would have thought that like I had stopped like some necessity in their life, that they need these calendars. And so this year, actually, because I did not send out my baseball schedules until the season almost started, I got an angry text from a client saying, Jack wants his baseball schedule. When should I expect it to arrive at the house? And I was like, oh my God, like she's like literally angry with me that she didn't get her Phillies calendar yet,
It's amazing. It's really that's become part of your brand, and your network expects it. One year there was I guess a glitch in the printing of the magnets through the company we were using, and they only sent. So I usually send a full magnet, so the whole schedule is a magnet. And this one year was just a little tiny strip of magnet, so the rest of it was kind of flimsy and could flop around. And I had one guy text me, you must have had a bad year. You cheaped out on the magnet, and it just makes me think people really pay attention.
I agree. You know what? I agree with you because I do the same thing. I get the full magnet. I don't do the flimsiness. But basically, this guy's telling you, "Come on, George, you're better than that."
Exactly.
That's hilarious. All right, so we talked about how you use ActivePipe. What are some of the other tools, CRMs, things that help you to stay organized to ensure that no client or lead falls through the cracks? What else do you use?
So ActivePipe is really big for us. We also use Real Scout, and my CRM system is not that sophisticated. I started out, I used to use an Excel spreadsheet, which I moved on from that to I use Google now. So because our Foxroach email is Google platform, I use the Google contacts to manage those leads and clients. So I use labels to kind of label them, and I have a system on my calendar where I know when to follow up with what group of labels, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to preface this next question for you because I am kind of interested in this because you do send out a lot of, mass marketing. How do you personalize that communication without it feeling like it's mass marketing? What's your approach with that?
So that's tough. The a lot of it, I would say, does come off as mass marketing. But that being said, it's also very low pressure. So if I send something out sometimes I'll send out a really interesting listing, and it's mass marketing. Everybody that receives it knows I just sent this out to thousands of people. But a few people will then text me about it, hey, tell me more about that, or that's a cool property. So then that's more where I build a relationship with individual people. But I'm also really diligent with, in addition to all the mass marketing that we're doing, I do make sure that I'm reaching out to people every day. Ideally, it's probably one of my weaknesses. I'm not as consistent as I want to be, but every day I try to reach out to just a few people in my network personally. And then a lot of times they'll reference some of the mass marketing stuff. So they'll say, "Oh, I got your Philly schedule," or "I saw that email," or "I saw that Facebook post," that kind of stuff.
Well, I want to follow up that question with the question of, being that we're in the age of AI and Chat GPT, do you kind of, when you send out mass mailings, I'm just wondering if you ever use Chat GPT to generate a subject line for some of your mass emails to work on engagement with those, or even an ActivePipe. Like you can use ChatGPT. Give me a subject line that's engaging and is going to drive people and your open rate. Do you employ ChatGPT in anything you do at this point?
I do. We use ChatGPT for the help with a lot of the body of the text of our emails. So usually what I'll do is I'll draft just an email with just a general message I want to put out there. And then I'll go into ChatGPT, I'll give it the prompts that we need to. And then I'll ask it to improve it or kind of expand on it in a few ways. And then I always go back and tweak it because I haven't figured out a way to make it communicate in the way I do. So I always have to tweak it to make sure it's using words I use and that kind of stuff. So that way it's not I think people know sometimes that was ChatGPT wrote that, but at least if it's not like completely obvious, I try to make it sound like it's coming from me. And then I'll do it for subject lines. I'll ask it to give me 5 subject lines, and then sometimes I'll combine like a couple. I'll say, "Oh, I like that. I like those couple words with these," and then I'll combine it.
I do the same exact thing. And I think it works really well. Obviously, Rajiv has been beating this drum forever. And so sometimes with with Rajiv, I do wonder, he's so good at it that I do wonder if, like, if it's Rajiv or it's ChatGPT or some other, version of AI, or what he's putting out there. Pretty soon I think we're just going to have a hologram of Rajiv somewhere, and we're never going to know if it's actually him or not. So he's really adept at that. But I do wonder about that because, obviously with your marketing, you're putting out a lot out there. You want to drive engagement. That's a great way to actually make sure that you have a call to action that's going to open, doors for you in terms of click rates with your people. So I think this next question is very important, and you touched upon this a little bit, but what cadence do you recommend staying in touch with past clients, and how do you adjust that over time? You had said, you may put out, say, 6 to 8 mailings a year, right? Like, how do you decide on your cadence and when you're actually going to reach out to people, maybe when you're going to pull back a little bit or engage even more, right? How do you decide that? What do you like to do?
So I think the cadence really depends on the platform you're communicating on. So for social media, I like to post at least a few times per week, and I like to make sure that that's it's a variety of topics, not all real estate related. A lot of it will be personal stuff that I'm doing in my life at the time. And then some of it will be about the community events that we're involved in. So it's not always like, hey, who wants to buy a house or buy this listing? It's more about what what we're doing in both business and our personal lives. And so social media at least a few times a week, mass email maybe once or twice a week. Mailings I'll probably do 6 to 8 a year. The past clients, I touch them a couple different ways. So I always wish them. So right after their closing, I'm pretty engaged with them because I'll follow up. How the move go. If there was any like outstanding item that I knew they were going to be addressing, I'll check in. How did that work out? And then if they didn't write, I usually ask them for a review right at as we're leaving closing. I'll ask them, hey, is it okay if I send you an email to write me a review? They always say yes, but they get caught up in the move. So a week or two afterwards, I'll remind them to do that if they haven't done it. And then I always wish them, happy anniversary on their home anniversary. But throughout the year, I try to, keep an eye on what's happening like in their neighborhood, especially on the street. And if I see there's some real estate activity on their street or in their neighborhood, I may, reach out to them if I think it's appropriate or it'll be a good conversation starter. And then of course we invite them to our client events. I spoke earlier, I have 1,000 people on my email list. I don't invite 1,000 people to a client event. A client event, I'm only inviting like people that we have done business with or that have given us referrals. And then the holiday gifts, we'll have that delivered or mailed to them. And then usually I'll have some type of text exchange with them, either them thanking me or me making, I'll reach out to make sure they received it, that type of thing.
I want to get into, before we get out of here, I want to get into a little bit of social media here, but more just let's just say online marketing in terms of social media, Google stuff. So one thing that I've noticed is like you had mentioned reviews before. Your review game is very strong. I think I saw on like Zillow you have like 500 something reviews, which I'm like, man, that's impressive. You certainly are putting a lot out there, which again, driving business, making sure that you're covering all your bases, because Google reviews in themselves can be the lifeblood of what we do and drive your name to the top of SEO and really work in your favor when you're trying to gain more business. So let's talk particularly this time about social media. How has your social media strategy evolved to stay authentic and still generate real estate business? Because I checked out your personal profile, your team profile. You're putting stuff out there. Let's talk about what you're doing on social media.
So I would say that, and maybe not everybody agrees with this outlook on it, but I look at my business page as more of an extension of like a website or like an online business card. So somebody that doesn't know me, or somebody that maybe is referred to me, and they're kind of doing their like due diligence, they're looking me up, see what I'm all about. They might go to our website or our business page, and so we want that to be kind of informative and show them that we're active in the business and what areas we cover and whatnot. But my personal page is really where the value comes in, because I can be myself, and it's not all real estate related. Even though like I do try to tie real estate into a lot of it. Like, for example, I was just on vacation and I made several posts that like referenced real estate, and my wife was like, "George, like you're really pushing the real estate here." But it kind of like it works. Like people that support me like seeing that, the picture of me in front of a Berkshire Hathaway office in Florida, and there's like, oh, that's kind of different. So I try to make it so that way my personal page is more like fun and engaging and less like just posting a listing. I find that if I just post a listing for sale, unless it's like a really unique listing with like an incredible pool or an extremely unique like architecture, that those things don't get much engagement. But people will comment on it when I see them. They'll say, "Oh, I see you had that house for sale on 25th Street," but they won't engage with it on social media. But if I post a picture of a leaking garbage disposal above an electric outlet and I say something like, "Oh, this isn't up to code," everybody chimes in, because it's just fun. It's different. It's not me trying to sell them something.
It's that unique, authentic engagement. And you're answering my next question already, because what resonates with people typically is a story that you're telling. And I know same thing, like I'll post my listings. I will get that out there just in case there's people that see this for the first time and they want to DM me or they want more information about a property. But the thing that resonates most with people is your authentic engagement and unique content. You had talked about if you have a unique property, yeah, that's going to get a lot of engagements because it's unique. But other than that, people want to know who you are authentically. And you brought up a great point. I was just in Exuma in the Bahamas, and I was away, and they have a Berkshire Hathaway in Exuma, which is a very remote island. And we see these Berkshire Hathaway signs all over the place. And they were along a highway, so it was really hard to stop and actually take a picture with them. But I've done that before, whether it's, Woodstock, New York, or we're at the convention somewhere, or we're just out in the middle of nowhere. Berkshire Hathaway has a presence all over the country. We always take those pictures, which I find interesting that you're doing the same thing. And then also, if I have a settlement like I did yesterday, now I haven't posted this yet, but I'll take a picture with a client from settlement, but I'm there to tell a story about them. It's not about me, it's about them and what they actually went through in order to get the property that we're settling on today. And a lot of times that resonates with people out there, because the home buying process, let's face it, it's difficult right now. So it resonates with people, and that I find has the most engagement for me on social media. Do you agree with that, George?
I agree with that 100%. I think making it about the clients is really the way to go, especially if it really helps you as the agent if those clients are in your network where you have a lot of mutual friends and connections. But yeah, absolutely. Kind of you tell the story, you make it about the client. You're not making it about, oh, I just sold this this big house on the main line. You're making it more about, the client. They went through this journey. I'm so proud of them. It was a pleasure being part of the process with them. And that, I think that really resonates with people more. And just a quick, interesting story about social media engagement. At one point, I was really trying to decide if there was like a better time of day to post on social media. Should you do it in the morning, mid-afternoon, in the evening? And I posted a really informative article about the state of the Philadelphia real estate market. I thought it was extremely interesting. Other realtors were sharing it. It was being sent out via email, like through our company and whatnot. And I posted on social media, and I thought, this is so informative. People are going to love this article. And I posted it. I think I posted like 6 o'clock in the evening, and I might have got like 2 or 3 likes. No comments. Nobody seemed to care. And I thought, what happened here? So the next day, at the same time, I posted a picture of a drawer of jelly beans. And it was like a silverware drawer, but instead of having silverware in it, they had the jelly beans all organized. And I think I got like 300 likes, 85 comments on a drawer of jelly beans. And it just goes to show you, like, you never know what people are going to engage with, but they definitely like the fun, more casual stuff, or the stuff that's like a story about a client, and rather than just like, here's an article or here's a listing.
Well, I hate to say this, but such is life. People often like the junk food more than eating their vegetables, right?
Sure.
Like telling a story about real estate and like the state of the market and everything is probably like eating vegetables for a lot of people out there, whereas the jelly beans is the junk food. I know I'm certainly guilty of that. My wife and I'm sure your wife and you are much the same way, where basically we're sharing reels back and forth all night, sitting on the couch and like cracking up. And we're guilty of that, just like everybody else out there. So it's always that content. You never know what's going to grab people. So one last question before we get out of here. Since you are a team full of Georges, right? You're George Maynes. Your partner is Jeff George, G2 Philly, obviously. And since you should be an expert on all things Georges at this point, and I have you on this podcast, I want you to settle this last question for me. What George would win in a fist fight? George Washington or George Foreman? Now, keep in mind, George Washington is the father of our country, and George Foreman is the father of the Foreman Grill, which is no slouch in itself. So who wins in that fight, George Washington or George Foreman?
Well, I am an expert in all things George, and I would have to say George Washington. I think he's just one of my favorite historical figures. That's my favorite period in time, and it would be close. George Foreman, he's a pretty great guy himself, but I'd have to go George Washington.
That's a tough one. Like, if you think about this, all right, now George Washington, I think, was pretty tall for his time, right? He was like 6'2", 6'3".
That's why I went with George Washington. He was so tall.
Yeah. Like for his day and age, he was like the behemoth back then in terms of stature. And I just think some way Washington would find a way to get it done. I do.
Agreed.
So I'm with you on that one. I gotta go Washington. Even though I did have the Foreman Grill, it was a truly amazing piece of equipment. But I'm going Washington.
If you ever have some time, sit down and start thinking about all the famous Georges there are. There's some pretty good ones. Yeah,
no, I agree. I don't even know why. I got to be honest with you, George. When I was doing this question, I have no idea why the first two Georges that came to mind were Washington and Foreman, and I just thought that it was such a ridiculous question that I had to ask you.
It's a great one.
Anyway, man. Well, listen. This was great. I really enjoyed this, and really great insight from you and what you do in order to make you and your team successful. So I hope that agents will take away a lot of good information from our time together today. So thanks for doing this, George. Much continued success to you and your team.
Thank you, Jason. I want to thank you for having me on again. And I think just thank you for doing this podcast. I know it's a lot of work. You seem to have a lot of fun with it, and that's obvious. But I think that this podcast is really educational and helpful to agents of all levels, brand new agents or agents with 20, 25 years in the business. Everybody should be listening. And I just saw your name on two places. One, wanted to congratulate you on the Mainline magazine.
Thank you.
Being featured in there. That's well deserved.
Thank you.
And I also saw your name on the list for this weekend. I'm gonna be with you at the plane pull.
Oh, get out! You're on. I didn't know you were on there. Oh my God. Yeah. Are you ready to have a heart attack on a runway? Oh
man, it's gonna be tough. Those planes are heavy.
Yeah. I mean, last year. Oh my God. Yeah, and those planes. So our listeners have no idea probably what we're talking about. So George and I are doing for charity a plane pull through Fox and Roach Charities with Cassie Erb this weekend. We got to get up bright and early, George. That's my biggest beef with this.
We're the first team.
Yeah, we're the first team. Last year we finished third from last. I think there was, I can't remember how many teams there were last year, maybe like 30 or 40. So we have a large hill to climb, but some of these teams they pull in these ringers, they're like they have a bunch of like Lou Ferrignos on the team that basically are pulling a plane. We keep it real, like we have a good mix of people that are pulling this plane.
Yeah, I think it's just important we show up, we have fun, and it's for a great cause. It's for the Ronald McDonald House.
Yeah. Oh my God, George, I'm super excited about that. I didn't know you were doing that this weekend. So I'll see you bright and early. And like I said, if I'm crabby, if I'm like not talkative, it's just because I hate mornings. It's nothing personal. So I'm like Garfield, how he hated Mondays. I kind of I just hate mornings. So anyway, I'll see you at the airport bright and early on Saturday.
All good. See you then.
All right. Thanks, George. That was the conversation with George Maynes this week. It was great having George on the podcast. Just a few things I want to mention. I'm not going to go on at length. This was actually a long episode. George is really great at being systematic, and we talk about that a lot on this podcast, but it is so important to be consistent. And there's so many different ways that you can do business in real estate. You can be great at open houses, and if you work that system and do your open houses every week, that's going to bring you business. If you're into community involvement like George is, then focus on that, do that, and be great at it, but be consistent. Or if you're going to send out mailers, or if you're going to do all of the above, right? You just have to be consistent with what you're doing. And my conversation today with George, it really stood out to me just how systematic they are, how consistent they are, and you can see their team's results. Well, that's it for the podcast this week. We will be back in another couple of weeks with a new topic, a new guest, and as always, if you want to hear something that we haven't covered yet, please reach out to me, jason.ostrowski@foxroach.com. And if you haven't liked or subscribed to the podcast yet or left us a review, please do so. It helps us to reach more people. Once again, this is Jason Ostrowski saying stay safe out there, stay selling, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Everything Real Estate Podcast.